celebration, whatever we're doing, it's nice to see everyone joining us together, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
A long time ago, the world was made of stone. And at the very top of the tallest stone mountain, something came to life. And that life became known as Tlilu, first woman, who walked down from that stone mountain, and she had 2 babies clutched to her breast. And as she walked, every step she took, the grass began to grow. And every time she'd stop and touch the ground, the water began to flow. And as she came to the bottom of that stone mountain, she looked, and there was Quartuk's mother wolf, who looked at her and said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am Tlilu, first woman." Quartuk's mother wolf said, "Where did the babies come from?" And Tlilu said, "I dreamed of them and they came to me, but I'm looking for someone to take care of them while I go out into the world and look around." And Quartuk's mother wolf smiled her smile, and her teeth flashed in the sun, and she said, "I will take care of them." Now, Tlilu was a little bit afraid, but something deep inside of her heart made her trust Mother Wolf. And so she wove a pack basket, put the babies in the basket to keep them safe, and just to make sure that they didn't fall out, she wove 2 wide bands and strapped them around the head in the basket. And there they were on the back of Mother Wolf, and Tlilu, first woman, went away to look around in the world. And she was gone a long time, but when she came back, she looked and the babies were safe. There they were on the back of Mother Wolf, and Tlilu was so happy she ran up to them and she unstrapped their heads from the basket and noticed that something was different. She had strapped their heads so tightly that their foreheads were flattened. From that time on, we've always flattened the foreheads of our babies in honor of the mother wolf, who, if you notice from the side, a wolf has a straight line from the nose to the top of the head. And so our people came to be, and so the earth came to be. And that is one of the creation stories of the Kalapuya people. We belong to a group of Kalapuya people the furthest south. We live down in a little town called Yoncalla. Have you ever heard of that? Usually people's eyes glaze over when I say Yoncalla. It's really tiny, it's under 1,000 people. But that is the homeland of the Komema Kalapuya. The people from right here, all up in the Willamette Valley, were actually Kalapuya people, living in about 12 distinct groups. And there were 3 dialects of the language. Very, very difficult language, and in fact, we're right now engaging in a process of relearning this language that's been sleeping for 150 years. And that's going to be a major undertaking. The Kalapuya people lived in permanent villages all around, big plank houses. People were not nomadic. And we work a lot in the schools. Well, Shannon works in a school, but I do talks in schools. And, you know, kids still have the idea that Indians look like the people in the movies, that we should have a certain appearance, that we should live a certain way. And it's like I tell the kids, we didn't have horses here before the explorers came. So obviously we didn't get on our horse and shoot buffalo because there were no buffalo here. So that breaks that stereotype down. We weren't people of the teepee. There are more traditional houses in America that Indian people used to live in, more houses that are not teepees. teepee is just something that got really popular when they started making movies, because it's really a distinct thing that you see is the teepees. We didn't have teepees here. We didn't grow gardens here. No squash or beans or peas or anything like that. So right away you break down what you're thinking about what Indian should be. And the movies have really done it to everybody. Especially this. Ooh. Now, be honest, how many of you have ever done that? Come on, everybody has, everybody. And that was taught to us as kids in the movies. And it's these kind of stereotypes that make people think that we do things a certain way. We never slapped our lips. That was made up in Hollywood because we do a yell called a Lulu. Shannon, can you do it? Lulu! But when they made movies a long time ago, they didn't think Indians could act. In fact, they had this big barrel of dye that they used to put white actors in that so it would dye their skin, put a black wig on them, and of course, when they wanted to do the scene with the Indians coming over the hill attacking the wagon train, and they said, okay, let's give some war cries. Well, they didn't know how to do that. So some director somewhere probably said, well, slap your lips, that's close enough. So everybody thinks about the slapping of the lips. Peter Pan in the village scene with the Indians and the dances that people are doing this. So what we've been doing is we've been fighting stereotypes. A lot of people think that the Kalapuya people from Oregon, from this part of Oregon, are all dead and gone. The Oregonian, even about 10 years ago, in one of their articles said, oh, it's so sad that the Kalapuya Indians are extinct. It was a real surprise to my family and I. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about what Indians are and what we do and the fact that we're still here and that many, many people live on the reservations here. Many more do not live on reservations. When the treaties were signed in 1855 in the Willamette Valley, eventually it came to the fact that the Indians had to be removed. Because face it, there were too many Indians. I mean, that's really what it boiled down to. And so the government offered a treaty. And the treaty, you know what a treaty is. You do this and we'll do this. Well, the idea was, if you Indians will give up your land, we'll give you a bunch of land in one place, all of you guys could live together, and we'll give you plows and mules and horses and seeds and all kinds of food, you know, flour and sugar and coffee, and there'll be health care facilities and schools on the reservation. Native people saw what was coming though. More pioneers coming in, more fences up, more laws enacted. So it sounded pretty good, you know. Let's go to a place where we can all live together and be happy. Well, most people who went to the reservation didn't find any of those promises were absolutely true. That a lot of things that they said was going to happen on the reservation didn't happen. People were forcibly marched up through the Willamette Valley to the reservation at Grand Ronde, or over to the coast to the reservation at Siletz. A lot of people died on the way, but that was the result of the Treaty of 1855. Almost every treaty all across America was pretty similar to that. And we always say that a treaty guarantees the Indians can live peaceably and keep their land as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, or 90 days, whichever comes first. So, we have had quite a history of being excuse me, of being removed and being replaced and moved around. And when you are taken to a reservation, you kind of lose your own identity. My ancestors who were taken to either the Siletz or the Grand Ronde Reservation became Siletz or Grand Ronde Indians. Nobody ever said, well, you are Kalapuya, you are Komema Kalapuya, or you are Shasta, or Takelma, or Tudune. So I think that's why people think that there's hardly any Kalapuya people left. There were once 15,000 plus Kalapuya people living in the Willamette Valley all the way to the Upper Umpqua Valley, 15,000. But even before the explorers came, there was disease. By the first sailing ships that came into the Columbia River, the sailors brought diseases. And by the time the Treaty of 1855 came along, the people were completely decimated. There were entire villages where everyone had died of some kind of disease. We had no immunity to these diseases. And a lot of people will talk about, have you ever heard the phrase, the Willamette Valley is called the Valley of Death? A lot of people say, well, it's really deadly because of all the pollution and the allergies in the valley. No, it's because the early explorers who did explore the valley came through and saw entire villages wiped out and called it the Valley of Death. It was very quick, very immediate, until almost all of the people have disappeared. We don't know how many Kalapuya are left, maybe 1,000, we're not sure. But most are enrolled with either the Siletz, where we're enrolled on the Confederated Tribes of Siletz, or with the Grand Ronde. But we survived. We're revitalizing our language. A few years ago, we recreated a 23-foot Kalapuya long canoe. First one to be made in 150 years. And we are starting now on the first parts of the language, and we're even teaching some of the kids in school there in Yoncalla the very first beginnings of how to speak the language. And so we're trying to bring this back because it's really important to us to know our own ancestors and to make everybody aware that we're not gone. We're still here, very, very much here, and a part of the community. We're teachers and doctors and scientists and all kinds of professions we have. So we're really proud of who we are. One of the things that we've really tried to do over many, many years is preserve storytelling. Storytelling a long time ago was so important to the tribes because it taught lessons and values, so that instead of wagging your finger at someone, a kid, and telling them what to do and what not to do, we would simply tell them a story. And in that story is a moral. So you don't have to nag kids. You just remind them. So we're trying to bring back this storytelling, the gentler way of teaching the kids, so that they will learn something, but also learn something about our history and learn something about the families. Within storytelling, we have our heroes, and we tell stories of great leaders and of people who have done great things, but you really never hear about that. But within our tribe, these are things that are really important to us. So I'd like to have Shannon sing another song, and then I'll tell you a story.
Yay.
Yeah.
Being raised traditional, mom tells stories, you're on the ground. That's just, I can't sit in a chair when she's in, you know, it's not real easy for me to get up and down because I'm an old lady now. I just can't do it. I try to sit in the chair, and so, and I sit on the floor with the kids too. The kids are like, Just because, Native people have been around for a long time, it does not mean that we're not modernized. Okay? I was sitting Indian style. Did you see me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody here Native American?
A little bit.
You're sitting Indian style. Right? Okay. So, but they've come up with a lot of really cool, more modern style songs that have English words in them. Songs for kids, songs for couples, things like that. So I'm debating if I should do Mickey Mouse or a couples thing. Why don't I just go ahead and do the one, this is a couples dance. And what you do is the women always ask the men, and they may not say no. Because we're not getting married. We're just dancing, right? So if he says no, guess what? Your little butt's going to be dragged up here, and they're going to say, you see this man right here? He just said no to this young lady. Young lady, what would you like from that man? You have any car keys on, So it's just a dance. It's a woman's worth. All it is a dance. You don't get cooties. You're not going to marry them. So some of the more modern songs that they came up with, this is a very modern English song. So I go. Pretty little lady, let's go tonight. Put on your dancing shoes, I'll wear my fresh Nike Airs, and let's go out tonight. We'll go dancing. Get really freaky, do the bump and grind.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah. A lot of the kids' songs are Mighty Mouse, Disneyland, SpongeBob, and they love those types of songs. I just think it's really neat that we can bring in the modern part of it and have fun with it with the English words. Do you want me to do a real song?
We've all been getting over bronchitis. We call it the Yoncalla disease. It seems like everybody in town has had bronchitis.
Mm.
Yeah.
What it is.
Yeah, think of one now.
When that CD in your head.
I know. I got a million songs going in my head. I just can't remember them all.
Festival in Portland. I think it's going to be the third weekend in Portland this year. Performance is open to the public. Master storytellers, or as we call them, elder storytellers, will be there and do public performances. We take also what we call emerging tellers, people we're teaching the art of storytelling, and they get to learn. Shannon was an emerging storyteller and has just been bumped up to storyteller. Not old enough to be an elder yet. But I'd like to tell you a story. Now, how many of you have ever seen a coyote in real life? Oh, I thought you guys were city folks. Well, we live on a farm out in Colin. You can can see these coyotes out in the field. You can see their little yellow eyes sometimes when the headlights shine out in the field. My grandma said that a long time ago, coyotes had blue eyes. Big blue eyes, the color of the sky on a sunny day. And oh, this one coyote had the biggest, most beautiful blue eyes you've ever seen. Oh, and he was handsome. The girls loved to look at him. In fact, he'd spend most of his time walking around with his chest all puffed out. And the girls would look at him, and once in a while he'd bat his eyelashes at a lady coyote, and oh, she'd just fall over in a faint. He was so handsome. Well, he loved that attention. But he liked to play games. But you know what he'd do? He'd watch people over here playing a brand new game and he'd memorize it. Then he'd go over here and he'd say, "Let me teach you the game that I just made up." Just so people would think he's smart. That's how he is. Well, he was walking out through the woods one day looking for a new game to play and came upon a camp. And in this camp, sitting in front of the campfire, were the Chipmunk sisters, Quisick we call them. They were playing the greatest game that he had ever seen. See, back in the days when anything was possible, it was kind of a magic in the world, the Chipmunk sisters, Quisick, would sit there and they'd take out their eyes, toss them in the air and say, "Gampya-ee, gampya!" And the eyes would pop back in and they'd laugh. Coyote watched him, took their eyes out, tossed them in the air. "Gampya-ee, gampya!" And the eyes would pop back in, and Coyote said, "Teach me this game. I want to learn to play this game. It'll really make me laugh when my big, blue, beautiful eyes come back." Chipmunk sisters Quisick said, "Absolutely not, Coyote. We're not going to teach you anything. We don't trust you. You don't always tell the truth. And besides, you don't have enough special magic power to make your eyes come back." Well, Coyote thought, "I'm Coyote. I can bring my eyes back. I've got special power." And he stalked off through the woods, kind of mumbling and grumbling, and stopped when he came down by the river. No one was there. So he had an idea. He stood there and he took out those big, blue, beautiful eyes of his and he tossed them in the air. "Gampya-ee, gampya!" And his eyes popped back in and he laughed. Oh, that really tickled. So he took them out again and tossed them in the air. "Gampya-ee, gampya!" And his eyes popped back in and he said, "This is the best game that I ever made up." So he took him out and he tossed him in the air. "Gampya-ee, gampya! Gampya-ee, gampya! Gampya-ee, gampya!" You know, his eyes never did come back. My grandma said when those eyes hit the ground, the Raccoon brothers stole them. And they play marbles with them in the woods at night. That's a sound you don't want. Well, he didn't have any eyes, he couldn't see, and he was kind of stumbling around and bumping into things, and he stopped and he said, "I'm Coyote. I have magic power. I can make eyes out of anything I want to." So he felt around on the ground and found a stick. "Ah, this will make good eyes," he said. Broke it into little pieces and made them into nice round eyes. "Ouch, ouch, ouch, ooh, splinters," he said. He threw it away. Felt around again. "Oh, two nice round stones. This'll make good eyes," he said, but oh, they're so heavy and so hard. Threw them away. Felt around, and right in front of him, he felt something that was really soft and it even smelled good. It was a little patch of flowers. Little tiny yellow buttercups. So he picked it, put him where his eyes were, and he said his very special words. When he opened his eyes, he could see. And from that time on, coyotes have always had those little tiny yellow buttercup eyes. And my grandma always said, don't be like Coyote. Don't copy people, or something terrible will happen, just like it happened to Coyote. And that's the story of his eyes. Shannon teaches drumming at our local school, and also she's a drum instructor for Indian Youth Camp, which, by the way, is going into its 40th year this year.
Nice.
We have between 50 and 60 kids that have come to that camp for the past 40 years. And we have 19 beautiful acres down the river, right on the river, that's been donated to us for the use of that. So we're looking forward to doing that. Now, before I tell another story, or everybody runs out of time, does anybody have any questions? We always like questions.
So on the drums, that's a normal drum, or you guys have different ones? Or, and then I noticed down at the bottom she puts her hand around the string in there.
Drums, there's all kinds of drums. This is about an average size drum. Sometimes a little smaller, and then of course there's the big drums that sit on the floor at a powwow.
Basically what it is an animal hide, horse, cow, whatever else. Scrape off all the hair, and then you soak it. And I don't know how many of you guys have dogs, and they chew on the rawhide, and it turns to complete slime. So basically that's what this is. It's just a chunk of slime. It's kind of gross. Right. And then every day you would go in and just tighten it and tighten it and tighten it, let it sit out in the sun. And then the larger drums, pretty big, but they're double-sided. So those sit about that off and round, but you can fit, I don't know, 8 or 10 people around it, and everyone has their own stick. We all sit around and drum. So when I drum with the kids and we go to the powwows, we always take the big powwow drum and do it that way.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was curious, were your horses at all involved after like this, I guess the Spanish brought horses in, did horses become a part of your culture culture at all to any degree, or?
Oh, absolutely. Horse racing was really big business all up and down the Willamette Valley, among the natives and among the pioneers. So once horses came, we acquired them. Yes? Yeah, every tribe would have a certain particular type of dance. Nowadays at powwows, we kind of do a universal sort of dancing. Everybody knows how to do a round dance or a straight dance, but there were ceremonial dances.
In your tribe, was it the women or the men, or was there one or the other that would tell the stories more than the other, or was it equal?
It seemed to be pretty equal, although in my family, it was mostly women.
Okay.
We are a matrilineal society, which means that women hold the property, the inheritance. If a man and wife were for some reason to split up, the kids would go to the woman. Usually the man would come to the woman's village after marriage. So we were very matrilineal. Some people call it bossy. But I like to say matrilineal.
Okay.
Sounds classier. Yes.
Are you having any challenges bringing the language back? Like, was it lost or was it carried through? Did it stay intact?
No one has spoken it really since around early 1970s.
Okay.
Before that, people were reluctant to speak it because when most of the people were taken to the Indian boarding schools, you weren't allowed to speak the language. People were beaten if they were caught speaking their language. So of course everybody forgot it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we don't call it a dead language, we call it a sleeping language.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of challenges working with it. Recordings are very, very scarce. They're from the old 1930s Edison wax cylinders, and they're scratchy and really hard.
Hard to understand.
We're working with a man who has compiled this giant dictionary of Kalapuya words.
Okay.
So, as I said, we're right in the process now of starting. Hello, how are you? I'm fine. Feel like I'm back in Spanish class. But we're gonna do it.
Good.
Yes.
So you say that you do not speak Yulan?
No.
No.
No one speaks the Kalapuya language. My daughter and her family are probably the only people speaking Kalapuya right now, and we don't know a whole lot yet. We're still learning. One of the problems is pronunciation. It's figuring out how, we see how the word is spelled, but how do you pronounce it? What is it that's the same?
The K and the C and the Q, it's all
K,
But
C, and Q.
every
are all-
person that recorded it, this person said, you know, a K sound, and then the next person said Q. So it's kind of hard. We're trying to think of our own alphabet.
Forcibly taken from the land. Immediately when the people got on the reservation, the idea of the government was to make Indians into white people by forbidding the language, the culture, the drumming, the dancing, the storytelling. And the government figured if you can get that out of the Indian, then the Indians won't be a problem. So yeah, it was absolutely forced assimilation.
Is there any resentment? Is there any held resentment to the people of now, knowing that we have no control over what our ancestors did? Is there still that harbored resentment?
Well, I don't, most of my people don't like to hold anyone accountable. I always say it's the system that allowed it to happen. The gears started in Washington, D.C. and just spread. And the people out here were the yes men for the government. And so they did what the government wanted them to do. There were a lot of friendships between the native people and the settlers. A lot. But unfortunately, Hollywood has glorified it, that, you know, it's instantly Indian against cowboy. And
Yeah.
that's the picture that people get. But there was actually more cooperation between the tribes and the settlers than there was some kind of confrontation.
That's very true.
Yes?
Were there medicine plans, and so that knowledge still available, herbal healing, that kind of?
There were medicine people, not a lot of people know that anymore. Some has been written down by the early ethnographers around 1900 who took personal stories and reminiscences from the Kalapuya people. In my family, some has been passed down, and at some point, maybe we'll try to reclaim that too if I live long enough.
Yeah.
Way back there.
I was just gonna ask, what are ways that going forward, you said that it was a system and kind of towards that assimilation. What are the ways going forward that then instead of assimilating, celebrating, you bring back that identity that was kind of lost?
Well, I think reinforcing identity will definitely help in bringing back. We find that if our kids are interested in the culture, by getting them to go to a powwow or learning a few words in the language, they're really going to want to. That's why the camp that we have is so important. We teach kids drumming and dancing and games and music and arts and a little bit of everything, and almost every kid picks up one thing that they really like. And the next year they come to camp, oh, can we do some more of the Indian Olympics, or can we do some more of, you know, whatever. This year we're going to teach lacrosse. Hand games.
Speaking of games, there was a stick game, and my grandparents were in the picture that's the University of Washington has from the Ceremony of Tears. Did you have games like that you played as children and that you still play?
Still play hand games, stick games,
The stick game? Okay.
beaver teeth, dice games.
Do you teach some of
They don't
those?
know where they're really gambling, they think they're just.
Right, right. But,
Guessing.
so do you teach those to the children when they
Yeah,
come to, okay.
yeah, we teach all kinds of things at camp. So, yes.
This is a question for Shannon. Is there a written notation for the songs and drum rhythms?
If you can get a Eugene radio station here, what's that station that Nick does?
I don't know the call letter.
Here's the, and a lot of people think just because, you know, natives are old, I don't speak your language, I don't know my language, so they came up with, a lot of the songs I sing are called vocables, which is a sound or an expression in place of a word.
Right.
So when they finally said, okay, let's all get together, but we don't understand each other, so the way ah hey oh, hey ah hey, those type of things are just vocables. There are, the song I sang about the grass dance is a plain song, because it talks about how they would weave down the grass and how it was magic. And since we don't know tons about our language, we don't have very many Kalapuya songs, but a lot of it's just, you can get CDs and listen to the CDs over and over and over again, and you know, sometimes they might even put like the lyrics up, you know, and stuff like that, but most of it's just memory.
But a lot of the Kalapuya songs?
The one I started with, that's the only song that we have that we put together, but now that we're learning the other, because there was 11 bands of Kalapuya from Oregon City all the way down to Yoncalla, but not everyone spoke the same dialect. So the one that the song that I sang earlier was the southernmost dialect, excuse me. The one that we're learning is just a little bit north of that. So we're just talking about hoping to get, you know, learn how to pronunciate the words correctly and then put them together. Do you say black cat or do you say cat black? You know what I'm saying? So we want to make sure that we get it all right, pronunciation-wise, and we put it in the right order. But we'd love to make tons of Kalapuya songs.
Well, we have time for one more story.
Yes.
Yes, that's,
They want to hear Snake.
we want to hear the snake.
Okay. My grandma had rules. She was over 100 years old. She was a traditional storyteller. We sat on the floor on our oputs, our rear end, with our hands clasped. You didn't get up when a story was being told. You didn't lay down when the story was told. You sat there and you looked at the storyteller. I know everybody knows one of these people that you talk to them, they're always looking at their watch or looking someplace else. Well, look right at the storyteller. So to make sure we would do that, Grandma used to tell this story. Now, can you make the sound of a snake? Oh, I don't know where you learned that. Must be a Hillsborough snake. Kalapuya snakes go shh. So try that. And to make sure you're watching me, when I put my hand up, I want you to go shh. Okay, let's practice. So let me tell you about the snake. Long time ago, as we all know, snakes had 2 arms and 2 legs. And they walked just like everybody else. Oh, this one snake, he was long, he was tall, he had his head almost all the way up in the clouds, and he had some scales on the back of his head, and the old women used to say, well, that's because he doesn't wash behind his ears good enough, just to teach the kids a lesson. Well, he was a good-looking snake, handsome, everybody liked him, but he had one really big problem. He loved to tell people what to do. So one day he was walking out through the woods, and there was a little boy. And the little boy was trying to make a bow so he could shoot an arrow, and he'd cut a limb from the yew tree and was trying to see if it would bend just nice and straight when it got dry. And Snake said, "Oh, little boy, that is not the right way to make a bow. I have a better way to do it, so do it my way." And the little boy did, and Snake said, because he knew he was right. That's what he always said when he thought he was right. So he walked a little further down, and down in a little valley there was a little girl, and she was digging camas. You know that bulb that grows into the ground? Ooh, it's so good to eat. She had her elk handle digging stick and was trying to dig that camas out of the ground. Snake said, "Oh, little girl, that is not the right way to dig camas. I have a better way to do it, so do it my way." And the little girl did, and Snake said, because he knew he was right. Well, he walked a little further on, and there was the village where the human beings lived. And he stood in front of that village and just shook his scaly head. Everybody was doing something wrong. No one's doing anything the right way. He said, "I will have to move into this village and teach people how to do things the right way." And he did. He moved right in, built himself a nice big lodge, and every day that Snake went out and told people what to do. If there was a woman scraping a deer skin or a man making an arrowhead, he'd say, "Stop, that's not the right way to do that. I have a better way, do it my way." And when they did, Snake would say, because he knew he was right. Even at night, when the people were in their lodges, he would go up and peek through the cracks of the wood, and the blankets were going up and down, and he'd say, "That's not the right way to do that." But they ignored him. Well, it didn't take long before everyone was tired of having Snake around. You don't want someone around who's always telling you what to do. So they got together and they came up with a plan. One night, while Snake was sleeping in his lodge, so sound nothing would wake him up, they sneaked in, and they'd made this long, strong rope of wild iris, flisquis we call it. While he was sleeping, they tied up one leg and made a loop, and tied up the other leg, and tied his arms together like this, and Snake woke up and he looked down and he said, "This is not the right way to tie someone up. Take off these ropes and do it my way." thought about that. They did. They took off the rope. Snake stood up straight and he said, now, if you want to tie someone up the right way, put both my legs together. Tie them so tight that I can't even move my toes. Put my arms down to the side of my body. Tie them so tight that I can't even wiggle a finger. And the people did. They took that Klisquis rope, they tied that snake up all the way from his toes, clear up under his chin. And when they were all through, Snake looked himself up and down and he said, because he knew he was right. Well, the people laughed. They tied up the snake and the snake had helped. So they tipped him over and he laid out long on the ground and they said, Snake, we're tired of having you around. All you do is tell us what to do. We have our own way of doing things. So we're going to carry you out of this village so far for so many days you'll never come back. And they tried to lift him up, but he was long and tall and heavy. And so finally they lined up behind that snake in a row and they started rolling. And they rolled that snake out of the village, all the way across that valley. Pillikpots, we call it. Roll the snake, Pillikpots. They came to a hill and tried to roll him up the side of a hill, and he was so heavy that he flattened the hill right down. And they kept rolling and rolling and rolling that snake for days and days. Every time they'd come to a hill and tried to roll him up the side of a hill, he was so heavy, he flattened the hill right down. That's why the valley's so flat. And they kept rolling and rolling that snake toward the big river. It wasn't long before his legs stuck together. And they kept rolling and rolling and rolling that snake. Pretty soon they rolled him so hard that his arms rolled right inside of his body. And they kept rolling and rolling and rolling that snake, and he got longer and thinner and longer and thinner, and he wiggled out of the ropes. And that's why Snake looks like he does today, with no arms and no legs. But if you're out in the garden and you surprise a snake, he'll look at you and he'll stick out his tongue and he'll say, because he remembers the time that he was right. And that's the story of Snake.
Snakes in your family. Her husband. Maybe you should turn that up a little, add a little salt to that.
We just go,
Yeah, yeah, Dad. Also, as Native people, we are very honorable to our veterans, our people that work, firemen or police officers, things like that. So this song is actually an honor song for people of service. Hey,
hopefully we shared some good things about our people. And if you have any questions, we'll be hanging out up here. I know some of you have to get back, probably. No?
No, we were running on Indian time. 3 hours before or 3 hours later.
Okay.
It's not that we're ever late or early, it's just that it's not the right time.